our county. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Ed Carson, and I find myself in this position by virtue of being the chairman of the Legislative Coalition for Santa Rosa County. And what that is a coalition of all 5 chambers in the county. And we come together once a month and as business owners and try to stay out in front of legislative issues, local county issues and ordinances that we have that we think will affect small businesses, because we're all about promoting small business and making sure that small businesses that come here, hopefully they'll come here, are able to thrive and expand. So about a year ago, we were sitting around talking about some of the things that we usually talk about, and the discussion kind of went to, it was budgeting time, and as usual, the Board of County Commission is scurrying around trying to figure out how to fund budget needs, and there's always the question of how we're going to raise the money, and do we raise property taxes and that sort of thing. So as a coalition, we decided to try to take this local option sales tax issue up again, knowing that it had been tried, but we really feel like it's the fairest way. A consumption tax is the fairest way to fund the county infrastructure needs, and there are many. One thing I'd like to start out with, make sure everybody is absolutely clear on, there are going to be 2 questions on the ballot. 2 questions. One is about whether or not a half penny should be collected for 5 years to fund a new courthouse in Milton. It's specific to a new courthouse in Milton. That's question number 1. The second question is, should a half penny be collected for 5 years to fund the infrastructure needs in Santa Rosa County? Again, 2 questions. We originally had gone to the commission and thought it would be better to try to do a 1 penny for 10 years to cover everything, but this is kind of the way it got settled. So with that in mind, I'd like to go over what I think are some very important points that we would like you to know about this. Number 1, this tax can only be used, or this half penny, depending on how you want to describe it, can only be used for capital improvements. It cannot be used for salaries, benefits, vacation, retirement, anything along those lines. It is strictly for capital needs. The first point I'd like to make is the local option is paid by everyone. Again, it's a consumption tax, and it's not just the property owners, and therefore we think it's more equitable. Something you need to know about our county is currently property owners pay approximately twice the state average as is a total of the county's total revenue. So we're paying roughly 52 to 53%, property owners are, of the revenue, and the state average is not, it's almost half that much. So you can see that why we're concerned with further burdening property owners. The visitors to the county are going to pay approximately 25% of the monies collected, which I've explained it. I'm in the building business, and to me that's like getting a 25% discount on our property or our capital improvements. This will sunset in 5 years. After 5 years, we can look around and say, okay, this was a good thing, this was not such a good thing, and we can look at renewing it for, it can be up to 10 years, but it'll be at the discretion of the board at the time. The next item is that Santa Rosa County currently, when it goes out and is looking at opportunities for grants, doesn't have the money to make the match when a local match is required. So this would free up some of those opportunities, and hopefully we could make the match and get some of that grant money that's going to other places in the state. One other thing to think about on that particular point is there are occasions where there's more than a one-to-one match, so you can get a kind of an exponential return on these monies. The next point is that the revenue from a half penny stays in the county. It's not like the state sales tax where we send Tallahassee, I think, roughly $80 million and we get $3 million back, which is not, in my mind, a real good deal. The entirety of what's collected on this will stay in Santa Rosa County. The half penny, each half penny generates $7 million a year, or $35 million over the 5 years. Moving Santa Rosa forward is a effort that's being driven by the businesses and citizens of the county, and we think that's important. We are supported by all 5 chambers in the county, the Northwest Florida Home Builders Association, the Navarre Board of Realtors, the Sheriff, and the Libertarian Party. So we've got what I think is a reasonably broad-based level of support. That's pretty much my bullet. Well, there's one other one, I'm sorry I missed. We recognized in the beginning there was some questions in the public about, frankly, the public trust of the commissioners once they got their hands on this kind of revenue. So we went to the board and asked for them to stand up a citizens oversight committee that would have an opportunity to look at the process and gauge the efficacy of this effort. And they agreed to do so. So we look forward to further discussions on that, but they have agreed that that's probably a good idea. One of the things that we're going to do, or we're suggesting that we do as a committee, is annually produce some kind of a report card that we will get to the citizens. So you can look at it and say, hey, this is what we said we were going to do, and this is what we did, and you can gauge whether or not you think it's being handled correctly. But we think that's very important as well. That's pretty much it for my just talking points, so to speak, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have. This is very informal. Feel free to ask away, and I'll open it up. Oh, let me do one other thing. I'd like to introduce some of the people that are here that have really worked hard on this. We have Edwin Henry, right back there, Teresa Johnson, and her daughter, Tiffany. She's the computer whiz. That's not me, of course. Kristen in the back, and Tony Alexander. So they've all been spending a good bit of their time. We're all volunteers. Nobody's making a nickel off of this. And they're out and pushing this, and we think it's for the benefit of the county going forward. So with that said, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
I was kind of pleased to hear you say that it all went to capital improvements, not to wages or salaries. The one thing that concerns me, you mentioned after 5 years, is up for the Board of Commissioners to decide whether to continue it for another 5 years, or does it just die flat after 5 years?
It would go away in 5 years, and the only way for it to come back is to do this again.
Okay, so it would have to
They
be,
can't reinstate it on their own.
it would have to be on the ballot.
Correct.
5 years to reinstate it.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
The first thing listed up there is roads. A year ago, September 10th, 2015, we doubled the gas tax from 6 cents to 12 cents to pay for roads.
Right.
Now, less than a year later, we're looking for another 0.5% sales tax increase, percent not penny, sales tax increase to pay for roads again. If this passes, what are we going to ask for next year to pay for the roads?
Well, let's make sure you understand the gas tax generates, depending on who you talk to, between $2 and $2.3 million a year. It costs $1 million, $1.5 million to pave a mile of roads. So the question that I have is, how many miles of roads do we have in Santa Rosa County, and how many of them need work, and how many of them need to be paved? I'm not sneezing at $2 million, but $2 million when it comes to road paving is a drop in the bucket, quite frankly.
How much of that is covered by the state DOT, Florida Department of Transportation?
Well, for years, we've lived under the small county designation in the state, which they would help fund a lot of things, infrastructure needs, because we're a small county. Well, guess what? Santa Rosa County is growing. They were able last year to talk the legislature into moving the designation to 160,000, but we're already past that. So we can't depend on Tallahassee to do any of the funding
I mean,
going forward.
obviously that $2.3 million is in paving all the roads, so somebody is.
Right. Well,
Where's the
hopefully
majority of
this
it
is
coming from
gonna
now?
be, hopefully some of this is gonna be, and some of it they have in their budget every year.
Well,
They
even
just have to
seven,
pick
even
and
if
choose.
you raise $7 million, and you put all $7 million towards paving,
No, that
wouldn't
would
be-
be my idea of what happens. We have, according to the county, currently we have needs for 75 million for stormwater. And you people down here in Navarre would know more about that than I would, but we're saying the county's growing fast. We're also saying that we have needs right now that have gone unfulfilled. And with this additional growth, I mean, we're behind the 8 ball, and we just want to try to be a little proactive on trying to get some of these things sorted out.
I know you
Yeah.
said that they're working on some sort of information as far as how all this stuff is broke down. You know, I think that, because that is one of the biggest things, I think why most people are here trying to figure out what the actual breakdown for roads, parks, bike paths, police and fire. Do we know how much of that, or maybe even a ballpark of what's going where with it?
I don't think currently there's any, I know currently there's no, we're gonna spend $1 million for this, $2 million for that. On the courthouse, obviously, they're only gonna collect 35 million, so that's what they're gonna have to spend. In this particular case, we wanna be part of the conversation as to where the money gets spent.
So if-
But there hasn't been any, again, $1 million for this, $2 million for that.
Now, I guess that's the county commissioners, or is there the committee that you're on, is that who actually is gonna be in charge of
Well,
putting together the budget?
we've asked to be able to vet the projects and make recommendations. We won't have any authority, they have the authority, but that's what we've asked for.
Can you clarify that, the Citizen Oversight Committee
Right,
versus not moving Santa Rosa?
that's
forward?
right, I'm sorry. And
there's
I'm
no
not
one
even
is
saying I'm on the
appointed-
committee,
And no one is appointed to that committee yet.
and who would do the appointing?
the Board of County Commission. It would be similar to the way the zoning board and I believe the restore board was, that each commissioner gets one, you were on that, you get one from your district and one at large, is that right?
The
I believe
direction
that's
from
right.
Commissioner Lynchard was that the county look at structuring it like the Restore Council, which championed VP Restore monies. That was one appointee per district and one representative from the 5 chambers of the county. So, and I did serve on that for 2 years. I can answer a question.
Okay.
Some of these questions you had there. You had asked about whether or not any dollar figures have been attached to specific projects. Back in the early summer, Commissioner Williams had put out a document that listed proposed projects and where that money could be spent. So 15 million of $25 million in public safety. Of that 15 million, it was 4.2 million in patrol cars, 7.2 million for the 911 communication, radio communication system, $1 million for software upgrades, 800,000 for the emergency operations building. Don't laugh, 1.5 million for fire trucks, or fire truck. Quality of life, 2.6 million. There's about 1.1 million in ADA compliance improvements that are needed. There is $300,000 per district in youth ball fields and equipment for a total of 1.5 million. And then by Florida statute, there's a municipal revenue share that's required. So all the municipalities in the county they collect sales tax, they're entitled to a share. That would be $150,000 to Jay, 2.5 million to Milton, and 1.55 million to the city of Gulf Breeze. And again, those were just proposed projects, and that total was 25 million. And this tax we're talking about collecting potentially 35 million. So there's still some money left over there. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
So is that all guaranteed?
No, this is just ideas that were shared. For
Now,
projects that need to be funded.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice sentiment.
Now, as far as the fire, and this does directly relate, that money you said is not going, it's basically all this is going to capital gains. So any of the fire districts, which I'm under the understanding that any special fire districts or MSBU based fire districts are not going to see really any of this other than the radio improvement. Is that correct?
I think that's generally correct. And I can't really speak to whether or not that's all they will see or whether there'll be anything else, but perhaps we have a number of gentlemen back there that are in the fire department. Maybe they could better answer that than I could.
That's true.
It definitely doesn't fund, no direct funding component for any day-to-day operational.
Well, it doesn't fund any,
Police or fire, either one.
yeah, it doesn't fund any fire trucks for those districts either.
Yeah, that's
I
a
don't know
great
if
question that I would talk to Patrick about. I mean, the county put that information out, so the county should pony up and tell us who's gonna get fire truck if they put $1.5 million toward a
Well,
fire truck.
if the city of Milton gets, I think you said 2.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
That's over the life of the.
Over 5 years.
Correct. Yeah.
and they can spend a portion of that on the fire department if the city so chose, I think.
Yeah, but they can only, it's basically like an impact fee. They can only use it for capital improvements.
Right.
That's all, it's all that's can be used anywhere as the capital.
Yeah, I know. So when you're talking about the money's going to the fire department in the city of Milton, you're looking at, unless they're gonna add a station, but then you have a problem, you gotta put people at the station.
Yeah.
So this money doesn't help that.
It won't pay for salaries at any.
Yeah,
point.
and that's, so you got the cart but no horses. So, I mean,
What we've tried to do is just educate the electorate on what the statute allows. As far as the specifics, when it gets to the Board of County Commission, your guess is as good as mine. We're gonna make recommendations, and I assume, I shouldn't say we're, but the committee, I assume, is gonna be allowed to make recommendations. And they can either take them or leave them because they really don't have any authority. The board has the final authority on how the money is spent.
yeah,
But we, again, tried to tell you what's provided for by law.
what's allowed.
Right. Yes, sir.
Santa Rosa County already has an extra 0.5% added to their sales tax.
Correct.
If both of these pass, we'll be up to 7.5%.
Correct.
Okaloosa right next door is still sitting at 6.
Right.
How are they paying for their roads, and why should I shop here instead of there if I'm paying more sales tax here?
Well, Navarre's a little different, obviously, than Pace and Milton, because Pace and Milton, they all shop in Escambia and pay 7.5%. And I don't believe I've ever heard anybody make a buying decision to not buy in Escambia County based on that. So we're already paying a good bit of, Escambia County has collected over $200 million in the 10 years they've had this going on. To answer your question about Okaloosa County has a little bit different setup than we do. The way it's been explained to me is there are more municipalities in Okaloosa County as opposed to the 3 here, so that way their county taxes can be less. But when you start adding on what Fort Walton, not as the sales tax, of course, but when you start looking at the overall tax burden, they're paying a higher millage rate than somebody who would be just in the county. And being that a good part of Santa Rosa is rural, there's a little bit of discrepancy as to the way you compare those numbers, if you follow what I'm saying. Hopefully I explained it.
You're saying there are more people?
There's more people in municipalities in Okaloosa who are paying, Fort Walton extra 3 mills or whatever than there are in Santa Rosa County, because a good bit of Santa
Yeah.
Rosa County is rural. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a plan, I'm guessing, let's say, if this doesn't pass, if it gets voted down, because I know that was brought up right off the bat about the actual property taxes, is there a separate plan if this does not pass to possibly increase millage on ad valorem or anything like that?
Well, we've heard the veiled threat of that, I think, and, there's other ways to do it, MSBU, TU, where you assign just a dollar amount to every parcel and they send you a bill. One of the things I failed to mention is that 1 penny, that would be both half pennies put together, will raise the equivalent amount of money as a 1.7 mil increase in your property tax, which now is just barely south of 7. So 1.7 on top of a 7, just in using round numbers, as you can see, is a pretty substantial increase percentage-wise.
What does that mean in real money? If you've got up, it's valued at $100,000.
So if you have a $100,000 taxable basis in your house, you would pay $170 a year if they went 1.7 mils. And actually, what we're suggesting in our case is if you spend $10,000 a year on taxable goods, which does not include pharmacy and groceries and that sort of thing, you'd be looking at a $100 bill. So, I don't know. I've never sat down and tried to figure out how much I spend on things that are taxed in Santa Rosa County, but $10,000 is a fair amount. Yes, sir.
This, moving forward is a political action committee.
Correct.
And more than half the donations from it have come from out of Santa Rosa County.
Right.
Why are people outside of Santa Rosa so concerned about the infrastructure in Santa Rosa and making sure we pay for all the stuff? Is it development companies that might get a contract out of this, or what?
Well, the first thing I would tell you is that I raise a good part of that money, and most of the people I talk to that have successful businesses in Escambia County live in Santa Rosa County, so they have a vested interest in it. And frankly, some of the engineering firms that contribute, there's going to be road work and storm work, and they realize that there are opportunities there. As far as developers, I'm a developer. I'm a commercial real estate developer. I develop all the time in Escambia and all around the southeast of the United States. I haven't done a project in Santa Rosa County in 25 years. There's just not been any opportunities. So I don't know if that answered your question, but for the most part, if you'll dig a little deeper, you'll see that a lot of people that own those companies in Escambia County live in Santa Rosa County.
So why would they want to increase the tax if they live,
Well, the reason is because they would rather see a consumption tax as opposed to their house in Gulf Breeze getting a 1.7 mil increase. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I live in Santa Rosa County, have for about 10 years. I'm not a wealthy man, and I contributed about $500 for this political action group, and I just want you to know why. We could let the property owners pick up the whole tab, or we could have a consumption tax where the renters and the tourists share. They use the infrastructure just like the rest of us.
Sure.
It's just common sense that all of us should share in the expense as opposed to just property owners. So as a property owner, it just made common sense to support this.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, and that's you know, the main thing driving this thing. Yes, sir.
I forget which one, but one of the candidates running for tax collector this year said that almost every year there's been a surplus here. Why don't we look into using some of that surplus money to make some of these improvements if we need them, or find other places that we can cut in the budget instead of raising taxes on everyone?
I believe the answer to that question is that the money is returned to the Board of County Commission every year. I've seen all the constitutional officers walk up to the podium at the end of the year and hand the board a check. But I think that those funds are very designated, and I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure the tax collector can hand the board money and then them use it for stormwater in Tiger Point. That's part of the problem with a lot of these things is, you know, we hear people talking about, well, why don't you get back on impact fees? And why, you know, the problem is that generally speaking, when you collect these fees, they're for a very specific reason as is required by Florida statutes. And you can't just start mixing and matching.
So the problem is bureaucracy, but we want to give more money to the bureaucrats?
Well, you can characterize it however you'd like. I think there's a need in this county. I live in this county, and I would like to see it based on a consumption tax as opposed to me as a property owner shouldering the brunt of it. That's
Yeah, but the
kind of the bottom line.
lion's share of what the operating cost of this county is not gonna be affected by this money.
No, not the day-to-day salaries, but
Yeah, that's what-
I will tell you this, that Santa Rosa County per capita is in the bottom quartile of all the counties in the state in taxes paid. Not to make an excuse, but it's not like we're paying the most and we're gonna pay more. Yes, Norm?
If you look at it one way, what you're talking about, the salaries of the officials, just take the police department, for example. If this tax goes to buying their cars, well, then they can use the funds that was going to go to buy their cars to pay our deputies more so that they don't go to Escambia or they don't go to Okaloosa after their training here. That's what's happening.
I agree, that's nice in theory. I mean,
That's what it's set to do, and I'd love to see this tax.
So then, on the police cars, I live near the substation by the high school over there,
Mhm.
and every time I've driven by the last couple weeks, I've done a count of how many cars are sitting parked there, and there's always 5 or 6 not being used. Do we really need more cars?
they might be inside the substation.
I can't speak to that. I would suggest you speak to Sheriff Hall, who is a huge proponent of this.
Yeah.
I've heard him speak about, you know, a car gets to 200,000 miles, and they're and they have to replace it, and they really don't have the funding to do it.
Well, they can get their funding from the state. I mean, he's a constitutional officer.
He gets it from me and
You know,
you.
he can, but he has the ability to go above the county commission anytime to get the funding that he needs.
I would think that would have to be a pretty dire situation
Well, I
before the
mean-
state would step in and fund the sheriff's department, because you'd have 66
It's-
other counties
it's-
asking the
Well, yeah,
same thing.
it's happened in the state of Florida before. I mean, that wouldn't be unprecedented, where the county commission has shot down the sheriff, and the sheriff says, well, just go to the governor. Because at the end of the day, he's a constitutional
Do
employee.
you want to rely on that year to year?
Well, no, but you're selling this like this is gonna save the sheriff's department. I didn't know that they were in dire
I'm not
straits.
selling anything, I'm just trying to present the facts as allowed in the statutes. It's up to you to decide, sir.
I think one concern, speaking for the actual fire department here, is, in Holly Navarre, they're going for a tax increase this year.
Right.
I think the misconception, just basically from that side of it, is, you know, us being attached to this and not getting any money out of it. You know, that's a major concern in the south end with
Right.
fire rescue and stuff like that. Just kind of maybe it being misleading to the public, so maybe some sort of public information on the clarification on that would be maybe nice to the rest of the public, not just us.
Right.
But,
Well, we recognize that, it was brought to our attention. And again, we were trying to present the information as allowed in Florida statutes. which I think we did, and I understand the confusion, believe me, because when we speak, this isn't the first one of these we've done. People really don't have a clue where monies come from, where they go, how they go. They really don't. They haven't done a lot of homework. What we did try to do was to clarify that is we have a section on our web page that hopefully, if you want to put it up, Tony actually kind of wordsmithed that, so I'll let you handle that one, Tony, if you would.
Yeah, we saw the letter from the Santa Rosa County Fire Chiefs Association, is that what it
Yep.
is? Yes, sir. And the problem that we were facing is that when the county had to establish an ordinance in order to get this onto a ballot, and they used the words police and fire in that ordinance and in the ballot language. So, I mean, in order for us to accurately portray what's being asked, we had to use that same language. Now, we also have a document from the county that says that there might be $1.5 million for fire trucks. We also know that, where's that fire truck gonna go?
Right.
The analogy with the sheriff's department has always been that if we can buy 140 patrol cars with this capital tax, then that allows the sheriff's department to take that 140 patrol cars worth of budgeted dollars and reallocate them into something else. I don't know if there's a similar analogy within the fire department. In my limited understanding, I don't think there is. So what we did to that point is we created a public safety page on the website that kind of outlines Florida statute, outlines what the ballot says, but it does spell out clearly that the fire department and the police department, and the sheriff's department for that matter, won't get any money to cover day-to-day operational expenses.
Yeah,
I mean, it's you know.
Very bottom.
Yeah, you know, you'd have to read through all the information that's there.
But-
That document that I was reading off of is also linked there. You can see it in blue. It says option 2 improvement project detail. That's the PDF that the county put out that has those. I saw you write down those numbers.
Yeah. What's that website? Is it Moving
Moving Santa Rosa
Or
forward.
you just Google. Yeah.
Question for me? Just a question.
Just a question. I mean, part of this whole speech has been that it's gonna go to capital improvements only, but based on that line of thinking, that's just kind of smoke and mirrors. If the money that would have gone to those capital improvements now can be used elsewhere.
Not at
right?
all. I mean, using the sheriff's department again as the example, their budget is so constrained, they can't fund 2 additional deputies. So anything, now the state of Florida determines what's a capital project.
Okay.
Not Santa Rosa County. So the state of Florida says you can use it to pay for X, Y, and Z. Equipment being one of them. Equipment that's roadworthy, that has a lifespan of 5 years, I believe, is also a requirement. So the Florida statute dictates that. If the county can then allocate some dollars for that, it does allow the sheriff to free up some money. But unfortunately, with our fire department brothers and sisters, I don't think that's the case.
And being able to look at your budget as a leader in those departments, if you have funds that are now new to your budget that aren't specifically designated, it just is good management to be able to look at, say, okay, well, if we didn't have those monies before and these are specifically designated according to law what we can use it for, now where can I use other portions of my budget where we had shortfalls before? And so it's not smoke and mirrors, but you've got to expect the leaders in those departments and areas to be able to look at those budgets closely and say, what is the best use for those dollars now that we have this new source of funding that is specifically designated for specific things that we did not have before.
Isn't that what they did with the Florida lottery? They said, well, put the money into education and
They just cut education.
They spent on education.
They put the money into education and then just cut education the same amount.
Yeah, so that's the same thing, isn't it? But I guess for me, you know, if you want new stuff, you've got to pay for it. If you want a new courthouse, somehow it's got to be paid for.
Well, the courthouse is
Yeah.
needed.
If you need new roads and, you know, flood insurance or flood control, you've got to pay for it. You just have to decide whether you trust our county commissioners to spend it wisely.
I think that's the
And I guess
crux
they
of the
get paid
situation.
as well, right?
The county commissioners control that money no matter which way it goes.
Yeah, they do.
Having a voice is a huge improvement to that process. So being able to convince the county, now Ed mentioned it, the county considered in July, the first Board of County Commissioners meeting in July, the county considered this idea of standing up a citizen advisory panel. Ed and I showed up to that meeting, Edwin Henry. When we showed up, they had changed it so that they were going to stand up this committee and then appoint the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners to oversee that committee. And we said, no, it's not going to work that way. It needs to be citizen only. It needs to be transparent. We had not suggested that the county present projects to the committee to review and make recommendations. The county actually had the foresight to say, we think it would be beneficial to present projects to this committee and let the committee decide on whether or not they should be funded. Now, as Ed said, ultimately, this committee will, see a list of projects and dollar figures attached to them and say, yeah, this is a good project, and present it to the county. But the county commissioners at that point are still going to be the ones to make the final decision. It's going to be by vote, by majority vote, and unfortunately, it's politics. So politics will come into play at that point. But I encourage everybody, and Patrick had asked me a good question. I go to a lot of county commissioner meetings, and when you can, and everybody works and it's difficult, but show up and hold folks accountable, because that's the only way. You're asking great questions, public forum, show up to the county commissioner meeting, ask these same questions. It goes a long way. They do listen, and we're seeing that here in the South End. For those of us that live in Navarre, county commission just recently voted to allocate all of a certain pot of BP Restore monies to Navarre Sound water quality improvements. I think it was somewhere around $70 or $80 million. And the board voted unanimously to steer those funds to that. So it's working. The fact that especially down here in the South End, that we have a voice, it's working.
Thanks. And to that point, and I realize, y'all work and I work too. Fortunately, I can go to some of the Board of County Commission meetings, but frankly, the number of people in this room is more than what is generally at a Board of County Commission meeting. And the squeaky wheel gets grease. I don't care what anybody says. If there's a number of people there and y'all are united on something, they'll listen to you. May take you a minute, but they'll listen.
And if I could make a suggestion, the Santa Rosa Legislative Coalition, as Ed had mentioned, is where this Moving Santa Rosa Forward initiative came from. And it's made up of all 5 chambers in Santa Rosa County. The chambers of commerce exist to help be your voice as well. That is why we're here. And so just because there's an issue that comes up on the agenda for a county commission meeting, but and it's really important to you can't leave work to go be at that meeting, I encourage you to reach out to your chambers of commerce as well and say, hey, have you guys seen this? Have you taken a look at this? Is this something that the Legislative Coalition can maybe go and be my voice, be our voice on? So, we do the best that we can. I'm the president and CEO of the Gulf Breeze Chamber of Commerce, and we want to represent not only businesses in Santa Rosa County, but also the residents, because quality of life and things like that are very important to us. So hearing from citizens is also part of that. And I know, speaking on behalf of at least my board of directors, and I'm sure it's the same for the other chambers in the county, if we hear from citizens, we can go and be more productive in our mission as well and be your voice as well. So just keep an eye on those agenda items, and just because you can't go during that public forum doesn't mean that there are others that can't go on your behalf.
That's a great point, Kristen. Very good. We just want the best for the county, and we think this is a good way to do it. There's no motivation outside of that. And if there's no other questions, anybody got anything? I would encourage you to vote. Obviously, I think that's the reason why you're here, but I would also encourage you to please get others to vote. Our county has a dismal record, dismal voting record, especially in primaries. The primary is when the vast majority of all the local elections are over with. After that, it's done. So when we have 15% voter turnout in a primary, we're allowing 15% of the county to elect our leaders. And in my mind, that's not a good thing. So I would absolutely encourage you to vote and get everyone you know to vote, and to please educate yourself. We've provided some information hopefully it's self-explanatory after you read through it. If you have questions, reach out to some of us. We're available. But we want the best for the county, and like I said, we think this is the most equitable way to move forward. So